Yeah. Well, the other thing there that struck me, I think, just when you were closing, you were explaining it, the fact that the teams work physically close to each other. Whereas if, I've worked in some big OEMs, and I'm not an engineer, so all of this stuff is like voodoo magic to me. But the fact that you often have in big OEMs, big teams of people in all sorts of parts of, even within the engine group, all sorts of different things. They often don't know each other, let alone meet together. Do you think that that is a really key part of how you've done what you've done and done it so quickly?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's very important. I think things that some people might think are irrelevant, like for example the space, the facility itself. That's I think really important. Well, we are now in a facility where we have started when we were 12 people, and now we are 400 at the same location. So it's a complete mess, and I want to build something from ground up. But I think those kind of things are really important, that the people can collaborate, that they have the right tools and right, short paths, and no bureaucracy, can make decisions quickly. And I'm not saying that we are perfect there. We also, as we have grown, the organization hasn't kept up always. So we have to also do things in a different way to remove some barriers and so on. But I think those things are really important to keep everybody together. I think that's quite, because if you had, for example, the battery development team in one country and the powertrain development team in another one, it would be very different. The result, I think, would be very different.
I think personally for OEMs, even the really big ones, and yes, they've got a lot of people, I think there's a massive lesson to be learned in this, in terms of reintegrating things. And interestingly, I went to a Daimler launch of an electric truck a while ago, and one of the ways in which they said they'd accelerated that project was to essentially build a little kind of startup team. And they kind of locked them away in, well, not literally, I don't presume, but put them in a certain facility where they kind of had to work in a totally different way. Which is to your point, I think.
I think that BMW did something similar with the I project.
You probably did, yeah. Okay, listen, I would be shot by people I know really well. And by the way, the guys at Fully Charged, Robert Llewellyn and Johnny and whatever, they've just said, make sure when you see Matti, tell him, unbelievable job with Porsche. That's congratulations on that. I think that needs another big round of applause, by the way. To be a 30-year-old running a business that's not even 10 years, and to, as you explained it, the first time ever Porsche, in my estimation, probably the most highly revered, beautiful manufacturer of machines, to have got that acknowledgement is amazing. Can you tell us any more about that, or is it all now dead secret, top secret stuff?
No, I think it's obvious that the manufacturers are moving to electrification, hybridization, electrification, especially Porsche and Volkswagen as a group. But Porsche has been quite closed in a way that, we are big Porsche, we don't need anybody else. Yeah. And they were developing all of their technologies internally, then some of the components were produced by tier ones. And in the beginning, they were also like that. Why would we need to create a little company? And then we proved them through projects that we can do, before they make a decision, we can already do it. And I think that's really what they wanted to get, a small, nimble team that can do things really fast, like the speedboat. While for us, it's a great win-win, because who better than them to help us get to a level from the low volume production that we now have and prototype production basically to series tier 1 with all the requirements. It's a very different animal when you produce a few hundred units for Aston Martin and Koenigsegg and so on, and when you produce thousands or tens of thousands of units for big OEMs where this is not bumpers or seats. If something goes wrong, if you screw up with the battery, then people can die.
And with
the powertrain, you have two motors on one axle. If something goes wrong, so functional safety and all of that, and reliability and cost, it's a big cost factor. So it's a very big challenge, and especially trust, that the OEMs trust a small company that didn't exist before with a young team and so on. All of that is quite extraordinary. And we still have quite some time to get there, but I think it's a win-win. So they get a fast moving company that has already some experience in the field where they want to go high performance series, while we get a partner to help us accelerate to that.
Yeah, well, my friend Adam Hammond in Australia, who's a lifelong Porsche fan, he's owned loads of them, whatever, he says this is the best thing they could ever have done. This like catapults Porsche right up there and leaves everybody in a trail of dust, a bit like your cars do. And, you know, can we just quickly talk a little bit about the C2? So that's quite an extraordinary machine. You're going to make, I think, 150.
Yeah.
It's got, what, 8 cameras. It's got LiDAR.
Yeah.
It's got a whole bunch of sensors. I mean, it's just... And when, I don't know if everybody's seen this particular car, I know you saw some video at the start, but in Geneva, it was just looking at like the most beautiful creature you've ever seen as a machine. And I love the picture of you with the Porsche guy. Forgive me, I don't have his name in my head, but you're standing there with him and he's just like, that's lovely. It's just, picture paints 1,000 words. It really does. So what more can you tell us about C2 then?
You know, we want with our own supercars to really showcase technology. So we are not in the business of making flashy, you know, toys for rich guys. Of course, it's in the end a very expensive car. It's 1.7 million. That it needs to be because of the low volume production and because of all the technology that's going into.
Yeah.
But really want to show, you know, everything that today is possible. So when I was starting 10 years ago, people were seeing electric and like racing as totally conflicting.
Yeah.
And now the same, like when we announced that we are working on autonomous, they were like, wait, sports car, autonomous, again conflicting. So on one side we have the electrification that's already proven to add to the performance and so on. So already people know any drag race where a Tesla is, it will blow everything out of the water, not even to mention our car. So the C2 is literally the fastest accelerating car of any. We'll see about the Roadster, so it will be quite close. So any gas-powered car will be left behind in terms of acceleration and power. But also what we want to show is that autonomous driving can actually add to the experience. Like it can get you on a track and drive for you 2 perfect laps. And then you take over and it helps you to keep within the limits. Tells you when you have to brake, when you have to turn in, what you did wrong, what you can improve. So having like a professional racing driver sitting next to you and guarding you in some way on the road if you are taking it a little bit too far. So that's kind of the mix that we want to achieve, like globally homologated, you know, safety on the highest level, high performance supercar with all the technologies that you can imagine.